Hi, this is Brian Kim. I'm going to share with you case number 123 in the best way to do cataract surgery series. This is a soft and sticky lens, and despite good hydrodissection and spinning, the pieces don't come up. And so rule number one, don't grab the lens pieces with vacuum. If you do that in the soft lens, you might grab the posterior capsule and make a hole in it. Trust me, I've done it before, and that is not the way to grab soft lens pieces that are really stubborn and sticking within the capsular bag. And so I will show you the best way and safe way to grab these pieces up safely and efficiently. So I'm using a cotton tip to steady the eye and use a corneal marker, which will help me to center and size the rexus. I make my paracentesis incision first on the right side and then the left side, making sure the incision is parallel to the iris plane, which creates a nice corneal shelf, which will allow me to achieve a self-sealing incision. This is some intracameral lidocaine, and then some intracameral epinephrine, and then some dispersive viscoelastic to coat the corneal endothelium and flatten the anterior capsule. This is a triplanar corneal incision. I make a vertical groove, place the blade into the deep part of the groove, tunnel through the cornea, using the cannula to turn the eye towards me, which controls the eye, and then I enter. Push the more viscoelastic to flatten the anterior capsule. And these are the Inamura cross-section forceps with sharp tips, which are really good at puncturing and cutting the anterior capsule. Now that I've cut and punctured, I'm using the closed teeth to control the tear, grabbing the right side of the tear to create a flap, going around circumferentially and using the corneal mark that I made before as a guide to center and size the rexus. With these forceps, these are slightly different from the other ones. The handle is flat, and so it forces you to keep the teeth straight up and down. So I think it's good in that way. Go ahead and finish off the rexus, burp some viscoelastic out. And this is the capsular fornix hydrodissection technique. I place the cannula under the rexus edge contra-incisionally, point the tip down, get a nice wave, turn the tip back up, decompress on the left side, point the tip down on the right side, hooking the peripheral lens, and the lens begins to spin. I don't have any trouble with hydrodissection since switching to the capsular fornix hydrodissection technique. Irrigate the cornea, lifting the incision with a chopper, going in with irrigation off to minimize Descemet's trauma, removing the surface epinuclear material, placing the chopper under the rexus edge contra-incisionally, rotating the phagotip vertically sub-incisionally, meeting the instruments together, crushing the lens and bisecting the lens and the horizontal forces, placing the chopper around the right heminucleus, pulling it centrally toward the phagotip, and dividing the right heminucleus. So you can see here, I'm trying to grab these pieces and they won't come out, right? They're kind of stuck. And so I'm placing the chopper around the lens and little by little trying to grab the pieces. They're really not wanting to come. So I place the chopper around that, and you can see now it came and fractured that piece even more. So I'm using the chopper to kind of lift those pieces up a little bit out of the bag so I don't have to go deep into the bag with the high vacuum. I think that's the key here. Placing the chopper around it, loosening up the lens pieces, and then going after it with the vacuum. Rotating the second heminucleus in front of me, placing the chopper around the lens piece, and then crushing it against the phagotip, using some vacuum to grab that third quadrant up, and then emulsifying the lens piece. So that's the key, using the chopper to get around the lens piece, hooking the lens pieces up, and that loosens those lens pieces up away from the posterior capsule, and then you can go after it with a vacuum. When the lens piece is stuck deep in the capsular bag and you go after it with vacuum, if you're not careful, you can make a hole in the posterior capsule. With this technique, you just don't have that issue because the chopper is going to the danger zone, not the phagotip. So you can see here, even with epinuclear removal, it's kind of a very sticky lens material here. So I'm removing the epinucleus and making sure the chopper is deep. I take the chopper out, push PSS in, take the phagotip out, go in with the INA handpiece, starting sub-incisionally and peeling from anterior to posterior. Again, very adherent lens material. Switching to polish mode, polishing under the rexus edge, removing the lens epithelial cells. I had good hydrodissection. I spun the lens. It's just unusual how that happens. What I surmise, and I'm pretty sure I know that this is the case, I must have gotten good hydrodissection, but not fully cortical cleaving deep down to the capsule, separating the capsule from the cortex. That's the key. So I must have had just a thin layer just within. So as a result, that cortex against the capsule was very adherent to it, and it wasn't dissected off. Again, it's not quite the same as the way we were taught that cortical cleaving is just one plane, but I really don't think that that's the case. When you're trying to do hydrodissection, it's not really, especially with the traditional techniques, I don't think you can get the cortex to completely dissect off the capsule every single time with the old techniques. With capsule fornix hydrodissection, I think you can. The only limitation when you're doing that is when you place it out to the capsule like that, you're more prone to getting those cortical wisps. That's my experience. So then when you go ahead and spin the lens, you remove the endonucleus, and the epinucleus just kind of tumbles out. It leaves all of these very fine, stringy looking cortical materials. And those aren't always easy to deal with. You've gotten all the cortex out in one shot, but it leaves these kind of stringy little fibers, and those kind of can be very annoying. And so it's kind of not, in my opinion, the best way to remove the cortex. So it's really better to, when you do hydrodissection, leave a little bit of, make sure your dissection plane is actually a little bit more central, so you leave a little bit of cortex there so you can more efficiently peel it off. When you peel it off, it's kind of a cleaner removal of the cortex. So I place the lens in, go in with the INA handpiece, activating irrigation, disengaging the haptics, going underneath the lens, tilting it and rotating it 90 degrees clockwise, removing the viscoelastic from within the bag, polishing underneath the anterior capsule edge. Switching to visco mode, removing all the viscoelastic from the anterior chamber, and then I'll hydrate my incision. So again, this is a sticky lens, soft lens. Even though I had good hydrodissection and I was able to spin the lens, you saw the first two quadrants just didn't want to come out. The tendency is to go after with high vacuum. That is bad technique, but that's the way we're taught, to go after those pieces with vacuum. I think if you do that and you're not careful, you can easily grab the posterior capsule and cause a focal hole or a tear. And this is a problem. The lens material is still adherent to the posterior capsule. So if you grab the lens material, you are going to be more susceptible of grabbing the posterior capsule. So if you don't want to do it the way I did it when you hook the lens piece up, another thing you could do is just rehydrodissect or even try to viscodissect. By doing it that way, you're creating space between the posterior capsule and the lens material, and you can be more safe and more confident to go after that lens material, knowing that it's not adherent to the posterior capsule. Either way, don't go after it with high vacuum, because if you do that, that'll be a fatal mistake in this situation. So I hope this was helpful to you, and I thank you for your attention.